Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Tim Thain, author of Not by Chance and founder of Trusty, and this is the Not by Chance podcast. Here you'll hear real success stories and proven ideas from treatment experts and families to help the parents of a teen who struggles learning how to strengthen trust, build unity, and maximize growth at home. Why is being intentional in our parenting so important? It's because a family's health and happiness is not by chance. In today's episode, we'll be talking with Kira Fanlow, and Kira is a former troubled teen herself who now supports struggling adolescents and their families. For the past 3 years, Kira has worked as a mentor and guide for teens and has recently started offering peer support groups for young people leaving treatment. Today's episode is titled The Secrets to Lasting Change, One Teen's Move from Rebellious to Responsible. Let's get started. So Kira, let me start by just saying we talked, I think, a couple weeks ago for the first time.
Yes.
And it was so fun for me because when I think about all the people I'd like to interview, you really check some boxes that we've never had on the podcast, and you're really a perfect fit for this podcast because not only have you experienced it as a teenager, going through the challenging years before treatment, the different levels of care that you went through, the post-treatment experience, firsthand from you. But since that time, kind of receiving this inspiration and calling to be kind of on our team to help teenagers. I mean, we all want to really help those young people. It's a tough time to grow up, and we want to give them all the support we can. So you've gone the full distance through that, and now you're one of our team members. I see you as like a great resource. So I'm so appreciative of you taking the time. And our first conversation, I almost wish we'd have recorded that because it was so fun and exciting to hear, for the first time, the first time we talked was just this connection to some things that you affirmed I was going the right direction. And when I think about the individuals ultimately we're trying to serve, it is the teenager. And to have someone that wasn't that long ago, be going through this themselves to say, that is so great, or that I'm so excited that you're doing that. Honestly, it was very affirming. So I would like to start out and let the audience also hear your story to understand, your journey to get to this point where now you are helping teens in a really direct way. So could you tell the audience, give the audience that background?
Absolutely. I first just want to say thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I give, when I read your book, Not by Chance, that gets the stamp of approval from a teen who's been through treatment. I was like, this man gets it. So I was so excited to talk to you because of how much resonance there is in our philosophies and what we've seen be effective, what we see as being, meaningful and supportive for families and young people. And, it would have been great if we recorded the first conversation, but we're recording this one today. So
Yep.
Hopefully it's just as fun. So my story, I would say that what was really going on for me as a teenager, I mean, I could totally give you a verbal report of my psychological testing and, what the diagnoses were. But what was really going on was I just did not feel at home within myself. And that put me in survival mode. My baseline, like just the day-to-day experience that I had of being in my body and my mind was uncomfortable. I just felt that I had been born wrong. And so that made me very eager to escape that pain at any moment in any way that I could. And that led to a lot of really alarming behavior, like self-harm, running away from home. I was suicidal. I had very low self-esteem and no internal sense of anchoring within myself. So I could very easily just kind of collapse and spiral into really negative black and white thinking. Like one text from a person that was worded a little bit off would have me feeling like I have no friends, no one likes me, I should just die. And so you can imagine just the kind of chaos and dysfunction that that way of being in me created in my life. It set me up for a lot of crashes. And my parents tried, as all parents do, with the interventions, that they could find at home. I did years of talk therapy. I tried tons of different medications, CBT, DBT, EMDR, etc. And I eventually went away to an inpatient hospital for about 2 weeks. And then I came home from that program and I had a home contract. And I spectacularly broke all of the rules outlined in that home contract just a few weeks later.
It was kind of like, okay, what should I do next? Let me read the home contract.
Right. I was like, here's my blueprint for just blowing everything up. Check, check, check. I cut school. I took my mom's new car without a license, went to meet someone I was not supposed to meet, and crashed the car. And the police called my mom. Yeah, it was pretty dramatic. And my mom came and got me, and we were driving home, and she's obviously, devastated and so upset and so afraid. And we drive past this church, and my mom asked me if I want to go in. And we go in, and she says to me, I came here, I prayed for you every day when you were in the hospital, and I just don't know what to do anymore. And I sort of went and sat a little bit away from her, and I just felt so hopeless in that moment because we had been in this for years and nothing seemed to be helping. In fact, rock bottom just kept getting lower and lower. And I just prayed to God to just take me away. I was like, all I do is hurt the people that I love. I don't know why I do this. I don't know how to stop. I don't want to be here anymore. And a few weeks later, I got sent to wilderness therapy. And wilderness therapy totally changed my life. I could talk about that much more.
I do want to hear some about that, but I want to go back just for a second.
Yeah.
I'm picturing this whole thing, and I appreciate you sharing the story because I can picture this whole thing, including going to the church. I got a little emotional when you said that your mother had prayed for you, gone there, prayed for you every day. And so I just think about, two wonderful people there, one young, trying to figure it out. I mean, all of us have been through these experiences, even as we get to be older in life. Just this week, I got an email that threw me for a loop, and I thought, as you were sharing this story, I'm thinking, with all that I know and all of the experiences I've had, what would I do without that? If I was a teenager, I would have been devastated completely without the tools. And so I can see again why teens can spiral like that. They're trying to figure it out. It's confusing. You've done a great job of helping us kind of get insight into a teen's kind of spiraling journey and the interventions that come. So thank you for that. And I know that the wilderness was a big thing for you. Like it was transformative, right?
Yes. Yes.
I'd like enough there so that parents and others can kind of sense what worked for you and why was that so good?
So wilderness, a few things. One thing is wilderness gave me a new reference point for how I could feel. So what you just described, to another way that I think about that was, as a teenager, I didn't have a reference point for what it felt like to be stable, to be healthy or successful, or had any other lived experience of navigating those triggers and those self-defeating thoughts. So being in the wilderness, I mean, away from just all of the noise and, constant onslaught of information in our lives. I didn't even know what my baseline was independent of that. I had never experienced that. And I actually got to feel for the first time what peace felt like. I had truly never known that before. And another thing about wilderness that was really transformative is I think that environment creates the opposite of learned helplessness. And I don't know the best way to describe that, to call it practiced competence, but I was building a body of counter evidence to this way I had felt at home. I'm weak, I'm incapable, I'm worthless. I was, thriving in this extremely challenging environment. And that helped me actually start to feel hopeful about myself and my future.
Wow. Yes, I love that. And for parents out there too, whose teen goes into a program, maybe a wilderness program, sometimes they need that evidence too.
Right.
That, look, my daughter is smiling, she's happy, she has the ability to do these hard things. She's dealing with this huge context change in her life. I've also bought into some baby beliefs about their abilities or their problems that maybe I need to shift the way I think as well. So,
yes, I'm one of the families I work with. Their daughter is actually graduating today from wilderness. And the mom was so worried about her not eating there. She has all of these food restrictions at home. This kid is like eating everything and the mom is blown away. And it's like, yeah. And I think something that is probably difficult for parents to maybe express to their kids is that their frustration with their children's behavior is because they believe that they can do better and they know that they can do better. And I think in wilderness, I mean, they weren't our parents, but I felt from the people there, the adults, the staff members, like they would not buy into my story that I was helpless. But I didn't feel that they were frustrated with me. At home, I felt a lot of the times just my parents' frustration more than their belief in me. And in wilderness, that kind of helped me want to hold myself to a higher standard and find some belief in myself because no one around me was going to co-sign that I couldn't do it.
I think you just gave our parents just such an important golden nugget because, parent is definitely on a continuum here of, in some cases, if a child is born and very early on, they know there's some special needs and things like that, the parent starts to develop a limiting belief in a lot of cases where they really fully buy into that because they've seen evidence for the struggle all along the way. And then there's others that maybe it's not from birth, it's later on these challenges come up. And I think they may have that sense they could be doing better, but it's so frustrating because they're not living up to their potential. So what they're getting from us, the parents, is what you're saying is the difference was a lack of frustration. It's like a belief in the process the staff would have in a wilderness program. They know that Mother Nature is going to support it. They know that the staff will support it. They know that time will make a difference in that environment. And so they can kind of let go of an immediate outcome. And allow the process to take over so they don't have to be frustrated. They haven't had to think about my child and where this thing's going. And if it doesn't turn around, then we're going to see the very worst possible scenario. So they haven't lived through that as a parent would. So there's some advantages they have. But the point you made is awesome. And it's just if you can extract out the frustration, still hold high expectations, but know that there's a process and have patience in it, that could be a great recipe for helping parents in a stuck situation.
Yeah, you articulated that perfectly. Totally agree.
So wilderness was phenomenal for you, and let's go from there. What happened next?
I had had this transformative experience in wilderness therapy, and my dream had always been to have a local wilderness program for young people because my biggest challenge with it was that it ended. And I
Yeah.
know that, that is the case for a lot of people. Like, it's so difficult sometimes to sustain the progress and continue on like the upward spiral that a person is on when they come home and they no longer have this environment that is consistently reinforcing their progress, a community of people who are also walking the same path. So I joined parent support groups online because I wanted to do some research into the
Yeah.
parents' point of view. It was very enlightening to see some of the questions they had and what confused them, their thoughts about all of it. And then when I was in those groups, I would just answer people's questions if I felt that I had something to share. And I was doing that for a few years and talking to
So
tons
they
of
knew
families.
you're a teen or a young person that had been in these programs, and they had questions for you at times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so they were kind of these open forums. So someone might post a question like, my daughter is struggling with self-harm, and I gave her a list of coping skills for what she could do instead. She's not doing it. I don't know what to do. I don't know why that didn't work. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know why you thought that that would work. Like, knowing skills is like this very small piece of it. A lot of these kids, I could have taught a class on DBT. The lack of knowledge was not really what was missing. So I would chime in if I felt I had something to share, and then people would reach out to me, as you said, knowing that I had a similar background to their children, and ask me questions. And I was doing that for a long time, and then decided to do that full time because I just felt like it was my calling. And so that is what I have been doing for the last few years. And I just started offering peer support groups for young people leaving treatment because I think you have spoken about this so brilliantly. The need for belonging and community is so crucial for teenagers, especially.
What an
Yeah.
amazing story. I love when people follow those instincts, that inspiration, kind of the thing they have passion about. And you know they're going to be really good at that. I mean, look what you did to try and help and learn, is get on parent forums and answer questions and help people. It's such a natural outgrowth of kind of where your heart was, and that's what I love about that story. So one of the things you said to me before is that when you got home, there was a lack of hierarchy. We talked about the word hierarchy being a little bit of it. You said something like that it has kind of a bad name, but it really shouldn't be. There's something really important about there being a leadership structure, in the home and family. And what are your thoughts about that? And how do you see that affecting teens today?
Yeah, so I think people can have almost like an allergic reaction to the word hierarchy because they associate it with oppression or control or cruelty, like that it's going to be used to harm people who are under the care of those who are higher up. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I love etymology. I think it's like examining the hidden source code of a word. And there's something in the word hierarchy that actually has to do with a rank of a sacred order. So what that suggests to me is there is something very necessary and enduring about the value of a hierarchy. And this is really difficult for teens because they will say that they don't want it. When I was at home, I was always pushing back against the boundaries. I want to stay out later. I want to drive. I don't want you to look through my phone. I was always asking for more freedom. And because I was very, very intense person, my parents would, give in to that a lot. And I did not actually feel safe when that happened. I've tried to explain this to parents before. I don't know if saying I'm using physics to describe it is correct at all. But if we think about people or objects, in a room, if there are some objects, beings that are stable, if the other ones are, very chaotic and frenzied, those stable objects can become something that you can entrain with. If chaos is met with more chaos, then it's just this like totally haphazard, dysfunctional space. And when an adult is stable and steady and predictable, it actually creates this like safe relational field that a young person can start to co-regulate with. And at home, all of the drama that came from me pushing back against the boundaries and them giving in, and then there's like a little bit of calm because they gave in until I'm asking again, it was all a distraction from me ever getting to the actual real work that was underneath everything. So I think it's very difficult for parents to maybe trust how necessary it is for their teens, because the teens are never going to ask for that.
Right.
In fact, they're going to scream and, say, don't you dare hold a boundary with me.
Right.
But there's an unspoken need that they're not saying. There is, this quote by Donald Winnicott, who's a child psychologist. This is a little bit different than the boundaries piece, but I think it speaks to teens don't always know. Again, if I had known what was going on, it probably wouldn't have been going on. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know how to explain it. The quote. It is a joy to be hidden and a disaster to not be found. And I think of this a time like I, left home and I was like, don't you dare come looking for me. But when I was actually out and I realized no one was coming to look for me, I was not happy about that. I hoped that someone would.
Wow, you have articulated that incredibly well. I could visualize the stable parts of that system. I love animals, and especially love horses, and so I've learned to train them. And if you look at horses in the wild, they are, they're really connected in their system. They really, as a herd, they feel each other's emotions. If there's something scary that comes in, one horse has that pheromone of fear. It is transmitted very immediately to the herd, and you get the herd to take off running, for example.
Right. Right.
And what happens in a herd of horses is they are kind of looking for safety, and there's all these personalities in it, and there ends up needing to be leaders that create that, in some sense, order, where, okay, I know how I fit, where that's at. And if you're working with a horse, you need to be the leader, because they don't know exactly what needs to be done. They don't know how to function in certain situations. They need to have confidence in the leader that they're going to take care of me, and they're not going to ask too much of me, but they're really, it's a safe place to be with them, and it's because of consistency, and they manage their emotions. And I have to say that I kind of learned the old school way of training horses, and it was not good, because there was inconsistency. There was at times, that's not a leader I can trust, and because, the emotions gets a hold of him and makes him unpredictable. So I just love what you're saying here, because we all have heard this as parents, that teens need those boundaries. They need the structure, that's some kind of consistency in their life. They need some leader to look to. And yet their behaviors would make us think that's not the case. And in fact, on the other side, parents, teens can get so good at manipulating their parents into getting more of what they want, maybe more freedom and other things, that they use tactics that sometimes really create fear in the parents to make it so that they can't actually step in with confidence and hold a line because they're afraid of the outcome. Parents, since college, my passion has been to help families thrive. For decades after, my team and I delivered the premier in-home aftercare, but it could be costly, and too many families were left without support. That's why we created Trusty, a unique blend of proven curriculum, personalized coaching, and intuitive technology. Starting at just $129 a month, you can access tools and expertise to get and keep your family on track at a fraction of what we used to have to charge. Like we always say, help things go right before they can go wrong. Visit trusty.com, spelled with 2 Y's, to learn more and subscribe today.
Yeah. I mean, parents have a form of PTSD. My mom certainly had that because I would oftentimes threaten to hurt myself. So if I'm, putting my physical safety on the line, that's going to put her in a very difficult position where she thinks that the way to keep me safe is by giving in the moment. But, as I was saying, it distracts from the deeper issue ever being addressed.
So let me ask you this. Were you, in those moments, were you really thinking about hurting yourself? Or were you saying, if I don't get that, maybe I would hurt myself, but I'm using it at some level in a conscious way to get more of what I want? In your case, what was that like?
In my case, I think it was, I felt so powerless, over my own emotions and also my life. And it was a way of just trying to feel some control and, to feel some control in the moment. And I knew, it makes me sound horribly manipulative, but I knew that was going to have an effect on my mom. And if I was desperate to get my way, because, as I said at the beginning, my baseline was just so painful. And when there would be some opportunity to not feel that way, even if it seemed really trivial, it would just feel like oxygen to me. There was one night I had a total meltdown because my mom would not let me get my nose pierced. And what it felt like to me was, this is the only way that I think I could not hate myself and what I look like. You have to let me do this. I'm not going to be okay if I can't go do this. So the urgency and intensity that I would feel was a reflection of the survival mode that I was in. And so, it was a way to basically articulate, to try and express how strong that need was. This is how extreme a measure I will take if you don't let me. That's how much this means to me. And trying to, affect her emotions as my mother, knowing that that's going to make her scared or afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so well said. And I think a lot of parents will really appreciate that. That's educational, to kind of look inside the mind and the emotions of a teenager going through all of that, and that it's not just pure manipulation. There's really a lot going on with that.
Yeah.
And acknowledge that it would have an effect at some level. So really, really excellent. Let's talk a little bit about your thoughts. Now that you've been in this role of helping teens, mentoring them along, coaching, and even helping parents, when you think about a teen coming from a highly structured setting with a lot of people in their life that care but are not tied in like a parent would emotionally to the outcome, what comes to mind as far as, first of all, why do treatment programs work in your mind? But it's the transition that kind of matters in the end. And what are your thoughts about that?
So I think some of the reasons treatment programs work is that they help a young person embrace a new identity. And for wilderness, it's because the environment is so radically different. It naturally leads to a new identity of seeing yourself as capable, whole, competent. And everything in the environment is designed to support that. The people speak the same language. The staff members embody the philosophy. The environment is structured and predictable. And as we've said, that actually helps a young person know, how do I navigate the world? Because if everything is like unpredictable and you don't know what's going to happen, just having predictable adults helps you actually find yourself. You know where you are and where everything else is. And I think it like taps into, like Wilderness certainly did this. It taps into a teen's desire for there to be meaning in their life. I think when a teen is struggling, we usually want to make things easier and simpler. And sometimes there's a time and a place for that. But all of the accommodations I got at home actually hindered me more than they helped me. I did even less when I had accommodations. And Wilderness was the first time that anyone ever treated my struggles as if they had some significance, that what I was going through meant something. I was growing up. I was moving through grief. And there's opportunities for a young person to be a role model in those environments, which I think is so powerful as well. And I think just like that whole environment, yeah, it's consistent. It's constantly reinforcing the upward trajectory a person is on. And it's helping a young person take on a totally different role in their own healing and work. And then transition is difficult because so much of what is helpful is that environment and that community and that constant positive reinforcement.
You know, one of the things you said that I'd like you to kind of take this theme and take it to the transition home is that need for meaning. You know, it sounds like when you started seeing meaning in the healing, the structure of what was going on, and all of that helped you, and how does that factor in terms of success after they get home?
I think that having some way for a young person to be a role model is so important. We talk a lot about how important it is for a young person to feel loved, which is so important. But it's just as important for them to feel that there is somewhere for their love to go. And
Wow, I love that.
some of the stories that I've heard from the young people that I talk to coming out of treatment that I felt as well, as they talk about their friendships and how they would, care for a newer student and actually reconnecting with the part of themselves that wants to love and be supportive to other people. Teenagers desperately want to be good kids. They want to be trustworthy and successful and responsible. And so I think like a lot of the meaning comes when a young person can kind of relate to those struggles as something that has opened their heart and healed their heart and put them in a position to give back.
I like the word role model because if you need a place for your love to go, you put those two things together, it invites the young person to step up into more responsibility, to a higher level of functioning, so that they can be a role model and serve others in that way. So I love the combination of things you're bringing here. It helps, instead of just be a role model, understand beneath the surface is that there is this desire on the teen's part to give back, to step up, to be that person others can look up to and appreciate, who that person is now. I love that. And kind of a calling to a higher level. Instead of it just being about me, it's about others. Instead of just being, following a path that's seen as good, It's like, what's the meaning in that?
Yes. Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah. What's the meaning in that? I think that just like transforms how a person relates to all of this. If it has that purpose and it can be of use and it can be made into something good. And you talk about so much of this about, having them connect with mentors and, service. And I think that is so crucial in the transition home because it's like, what is valuable about treatment, as we've talked about, is the structure and the consistency and the emotional attunement and safety of the adults around them, which is what adults can try to create at home. But then on the level of like what has been cultivated in this young person through their time, that is like the meaning and the service and desiring to be a role model and give back. And that is also something, we can work to bring through.
Mm-hmm. I love it. This is really making this whole experience more rich as we think about it. It's not a 5-step process. It's kind of developing this new identity, really.
Yes.
Of seeing themselves as capable, but also good and giving and a role model. And it's just kind of this call to this higher place. And yeah, when you see it, it's amazing. I remember with our wilderness program, I remember we had a young man that he was the first one that ever did this. His dad called me up and said, he is just missing the wilderness so bad, and he just wants to be out there. And I know he can't join the group or anything, but could he come out and just kind of hike, be somewhere close, and he could camp a little ways away. He was trying to figure out a way to do it, and he ultimately did come back out, and he spent like 2 weeks hiking, and he'd join the groups, and then he'd kind of do his own thing at times, but he'd join the groups and come in, and he was a role model. Wow. He was a boy that had somehow really made that part of his identity, that I can come out, I have these skills, but I also have this new insight.
Yes.
And I can give back. And he wanted to do it in the wilderness. So it was
love that.
Just a really cool experience. I
love that. Yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just love that. I just love that there was a way for him to have that touch point back into it. And how like stepping into that role, like it does, you stand with your spine a little bit straighter because you're like, someone is like looking to me to be an example. I can't let them down.
Yeah, it's like this alumni coming back, and he knows all the trails, and he knows
he can show them, the best like woods to use, like all that stuff. Yeah.
So it was one of the highlights actually for me in that program, is seeing that. We had actually a couple after that. I was so new into it. I was new in the field. My founding partner wasn't quite sure about it, but I'm this kind of green light thinker. And I'm like, there's got to be a way. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And so it was awesome.
Oh, I love that.
I want to just, as we get closer to wrapping up, I don't want it to wrap up, Kira, because it has been amazing to hear it straight from you. But I'd like to talk a little bit about, the thing that I'm so excited about right now is to have the belief, and you're helping me kind of say this in a different way, but to have the belief that this young person who's going through this transformative experience will have a vision for themselves in the future enough that they can create the plan for moving forward after treatment. Instead of their parents being the one kind of hand-feeding them, this is what the plan is. That I really believe that most teens, on the heels of an experience like you've described, can see themselves in the future as a successful person and want that, and also understand where the freedoms and privileges that they want, how that connects to trust and responsibility. And so what I'm working on right now is an AI tool that can be that sounding board that a teen could talk to, essentially, and go through a series of steps in their thinking process to ultimately create a transition plan that they could give to their parent and say, what do you think? And I think we can be 90% of the way there in a lot of cases. And I think we'll see a lot of parents' jaws drop because their teen, it's tapping into kind of what you're saying. They've had meaning and purpose. They want that to continue. There's some freedoms and privileges they want, but now it's in the context of a more mature mind. And with the help of an AI coach that we're training, the output of that, I think, is going to be phenomenal.
I agree wholeheartedly that I think the output would be amazing. I mean, first of all, so many of the teens that I work with use AI for so much. Mm-hmm. Like not just outlining a paper, they use it for advice, they use it for planning. It's pretty remarkable, all of the ways that they're tapping into using it. I told you this story the first time we talked about how I was working with this girl and she was preparing to go home. And she came to me so excited with this plan for herself when she got back. I'm going to go to bed at this time every night. I'm only going to connect with these friends. I'm not going to smoke weed, etc. And she was so enthused about it. And then a few days later, her parents sent her their proposal for a home contract. And she was like, this is so ridiculous. They don't know anything. I don't want to do any of what they're asking. And when I looked at it, Tim, it was literally identical to what she had written out and outlined for herself. But when it was coming from her parents, she had this automatic reaction to it. And it reminded me of when I was a teenager. I felt that the only way that I knew self-control was through self-destruction, because everyone was just pushing all of these behaviors on me. And so an unconscious effort to feel in control of my own life and be my own person, I was like, I'm going to do the opposite of all of that. Even if it was actually stuff I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. The need to be independent was stronger than the need to be safe or successful. And so what I think you are doing with this is tapping into a teenager's natural desire for independence and to individuate, rather than trying to correct it or change it. It's like, this is here and this is here for a reason. Let's actually harness it and teach them how to express that in a healthy way that's going to serve them, and not in the way that where it comes out sideways. So I think that it is a really wise move to try and put teenagers in the driver's seat, ask them what they want for their life, but with the AI tool, be giving them guidance and insight that they might listen to. Because if I had tried to write a home plan, I might not have totally known what to put on it. Mm-hmm. There might have been things I wouldn't have thought about. But again, I mean, the messenger is everything with teenagers.
Right.
So if it's coming from this very neutral party that they are actually kind of coming to see through our increasing interactions with AI as valuable and insightful, they ought to be far more open to its input. So I think it's really wonderful, and I'm so excited to see what comes from it.
I love just thinking about that story you shared, where the young woman rejected her parents' plan that was pretty much identical to her own. And what's neat about that case is that you could probably, when the emotions go away, you could look at those two side by side and say, oh, yeah, well, they're pretty they match up pretty well.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, it's like a keto. It's this martial art that takes the energy of the person and kind of lets it be what it is, and let them take that and just maybe move it just a little bit. Yes. In order for it to be what it needs to be. And so if they're the driver behind it, we all know that ownership is huge. If we give someone something, they never work for it, or they never thought of it themselves, or wanted it themselves. They don't take care of it. They don't value it.
Right.
But the other thing that I'm excited about is it'll help them start to really understand the relationship between trust from a parent and their openness to give more freedoms. You know, we have 5 kids, and it's very clear to us, you know, the kind of the trust level that's there for different things as each child, you know, gets into the teen years and they start requesting more time out on, you know, for their curfew, or they want a cell phone earlier. And some of them, it's just been so easy to say yes, absolutely. Because what teens don't realize is that it's trust that unlocks those things. Yes, you can get them through manipulation. You can get those things in different ways. But if they would find the right gateway to get those things, their parents are glad to hand those over. And that's what we really want to do, is help them start to connect the dots between not just getting what I want, but getting what I want in a way that actually builds trust with my parents in the process. Because I have had the chance with AI to think more wisely and think through, you know, if I've abused the freedom or the privilege I've had of having a cell phone by being on it and doing, you know, being on social media all night long, and the next day I won't go to school because I'm too tired, you know, I'm going to have to address that breach of trust in my plan. I'm going to need to build up to it, to the point where I'm able to say, hey, I'll do X, Y, or Z for, you know, I will, you know, hand my phone to you at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. every night for 2 weeks. If I can, after that, build trust, then maybe I get it for an extra hour. And so they start to connect the dots, and they're going to be better parents, by the way, as a result of that. They'll learn how to unlock, you know, help their own kids unlock trust and more freedoms and privileges. We're going to call it, by the way, it's going to be called Freedom and Privileges Recovery Tool.
I love that. I love that. And the other thought that I had as you were talking about it is I feel like it's going to help teenagers realize everyone's on the same side. Because parents say all the time, I don't want to be on my kid's case. I want them to do this. I want to give them the freedom and privilege they're asking for. I just want to know they're responsible enough to have it. And the teens are like, well, give it to me, and then I'll show you I'm responsible enough to have it.
Yeah. They want that advanced loan. Yeah, I know you don't trust me. I had a guest on the podcast. He did a great job of saying, I know you don't trust me right now because of X, Y, or Z, but just go ahead and trust me, and I'll prove to you that was a smart decision. Instead of, you know, building up that trust first.
Right. And going back to what you said before, when something is given and not earned, we don't actually take good care of it. Because I got my parents to give me an advance loan a few times, and I spent it and did not return it. Yeah. But I think it will just aid in that awareness that your parents want to give you privileges and freedom and responsibility, and that they're actually on your side, because parents are actually such a resource for teenagers. And as a teenager, we usually experience them as, you know, like our enemies almost.
They're a barrier.
Or like our barrier. Yeah. That's a better word for it. Our barrier, like what's standing in our way. And as you said, just helping them find the gateway through, everyone can be on the same side.
So we're really excited about that. And when I mentioned it to you and your eyes lit up, that was to me as a little more evidence that maybe we're on the right track. And by the time this comes out, I think it will be, by the time our podcast is out, we should be ready to go. Well, Kira, thank you so much for your time today. We literally could go on and on. You've got a vast amount of knowledge, and your wisdom is off the charts. all
Thank
of that life experience you've been through, the hard times, the challenges with your family, the years when you didn't know who you were, and all the treatment experiences you've had, the time on parenting forums, all of it. Now in the real world, you're now mentoring all these young people. And where can parents get a hold of you or know where to find more information?
So my website would be the best place to go. It's hominginstinct.org. And I have information there about the peer support groups, my mentoring, and blogs and other resources there as well.
Awesome. Well, I highly recommend you to the families out there that could use some help with their teenagers, and you work with the parents sometimes, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so you
Yeah,
do that
yeah.
as well. So so glad that we had this chance to talk, and maybe down the road we'll do it again.
I would absolutely love that, Tim. Thank you so much for having me. This is truly, conversations like this are like, those moments where it all feels worth it. So thank
Yeah,
you.
so glad we had this chance, and thank you.